Hello, everyone, again. So today we are here with Ciara Lawrence. Ciara works with UK disability charity Mencap as their big plan engagement lead, which we're going to hear all about in a little while. She's also a podcaster, and she works with multiple other charities as an ambassador and a trustee. And I don't know where she gets all the time, but let's find out. Ciara, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm loving your Dublin shirt.
Yes, it's very on brand today because all the tickets for Bono's European book tour sale has gone on sale today. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get tickets yet, but I'm hoping at some point I will. But yeah, so I thought I'll be very on brand today.
Very on brand. Fingers crossed you get those tickets.
Fingers crossed I get tickets, yeah.
I know. So Ciara, for people who don't know about you, can you tell us about the work that you're doing with Mencap at the minute?
Yes, sure. So I am Ciara Lawrence, and I am a person with a learning disability. I've worked for the UK Learning Disability Charity now for 21 years, so I've been at Mencap a very long time. My current current job title is engagement lead, and in English, that means I'm helping to lead on the engagement side of our amazing 5-year big plan at Mencap. And the message of our big plan is that we want the UK to be the best place in the world for people with a learning disability to live happy and healthy lives, which I think is an amazing message. That's what we really want to achieve. And I'm sure we will achieve it. And so at the moment, I'm talking to lots and lots and lots of people with a learning disability about our big plan and getting them involved in some of the projects that I'm running around the big plan, and making sure people with a learning disability are included in those projects right from the start, right through the process, right to the end. So it's really inclusive, it's really diverse. And so, yeah, there's lots of exciting projects going on at the moment, lots of meetings going on. And it's really important that Mencap, as a learning disability organisation, as a learning disability charity, really think about the way they include and involve people with a learning disability in their work. So I do advise people like managers on how to manage people with a learning disability. I advise them on how to communicate with people with a learning disability. So I do a lot of work around inclusion, making sure people are included in their work, and also around diversity, equality, and big plans. So yeah, that is me.
Keeping busy. Would you give us an example of one of the projects that you've been working on at Mencap?
Sure, yes. So at the moment, I am part of a huge big piece of work in Mencap called storytelling. And that is all about how we make sure when someone with a learning disability shares their story about having a learning disability, about their life, that Mencap treat it in a really good way. So thinking about when you first ask someone if they'd like to share their story right at the start, there's some stuff around consent and that the person's happy to share their story, and that they make sure they talk them through how that might work and if they're happy. Then obviously preparing them to share their story. And then the next bit is sharing their story and making sure they get as much out of them as possible in a really professional, good way. Then there's the next bit, which is the post bit, and that's the bit we're thinking about at the moment, because in Mencap, people can share their story of having a learning disability in all different ways, because Mencap is such a big organisation, so people can be asked to share their story for fundraising, for raising money, for campaigning, for media purposes, for telling awareness to other people inside and outside of Mencap. So there's loads of reasons why someone might share their story to help raise awareness or money, or to campaign, or to go and lobby someone important and they share their story with them. And what we want at Mencap is we want a really good way of making sure that person doesn't feel like they're going to share their story and then that's it, like there's actually a process to it. So we're just thinking about that at the moment and making sure people with a learning disability are really supported well to be able to share their story, because that is their life, that is their story, that is them. Sometimes it could be a happy story, sometimes it could be a bit of a sad story, it could be a really awful story. And as we all know, people with a learning disability have barriers they face in their life every day of their life. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I went on a TV programme here in the UK, and I had to talk about a woman with a learning disability that had all her teeth taken out. Now, she was told that she would only be having 2 teeth taken out. When the dentist went and did the anaesthetic, they realised that actually all her teeth were bad. She was referred to a hospital, and under no consent, all her teeth were taken out. And after the operation, when she woke up and her family realised that all her teeth had gone, and there had been no consent, they hadn't even been told that was going to happen, and she died shortly after.
God. That's terrible.
And so I had to go on a TV programme and tell that story. And obviously it was really sad. And I had to be really professional. I had to do my job in telling that story, even though it was very, very sad. And so for me afterwards, when I left there, I kind of had this moment of, it made me feel like I really wanted to share how I felt about it with someone, and kind of, sometimes because you're doing a job, you kind of put your emotions to one side and your own feelings to one side. So it was really important for me as a person with a learning disability to be able to then be allowed to say, actually, this is how I feel about it as a person with a learning disability. I've gone and done my job, I've talked about it, but I would like to chat to someone now about it and tell them actually how it made me feel doing that. And I think that's so important, because when we're sharing stories that aren't great about people with a learning disability, sometimes we share our story and there's not always that aftercare. And I think that's really important, to be able to say, actually, no, I want a space to be able to tell you or tell someone actually how that's made me feel afterwards or beforehand. And make sure that actually, if I'm not comfortable beforehand, that actually I can say no or say yes. So that's a big piece of work we're doing at Mencap at the moment. So that's really awesome.
That's amazing.
And that's going
so
really
important.
well at the moment. Yeah. Another piece of work project I'm doing at the moment is around IT. IT isn't very sexy, believe me. But at the moment, we're trying to get all of the IT staff that work at Mencap trained in learning disability, because when they answer the phone in IT to someone with a learning disability, sometimes the IT member of staff might not know that person has a learning disability, and sometimes they use big words with them, and it gets quite hard to kind of understand what they want from them. So at the moment, I'm working with IT on a project, and hopefully we're going to get all the IT staff trained in learning disability. That's the aim. So I'm really hoping that will happen now. So that's another kind of project I'm working on. And then, I've got lots of different things that I do. I'll be here till midnight if I say none of them. So,
I'm going to have to cut you off there. But going back to, that was a nice little segue to my next question about sharing your story. So when you're not working with Mencap, you actually have your own podcast, right?
So during the COVID pandemic, as we all were all at home. We all had to stay at home. We couldn't really go out unless it was necessary. And for a little while, I was actually furloughed from my job at Mencap. And so I found that really, really hard to deal with. And so I started watching some other podcasts that people were making online. So I watched Michelle Obama's podcast that she made during the pandemic, and that was amazing. Mm-hmm. So I then was like, because I was furloughed still at that point and I wasn't allowed to do my job, I wasn't allowed to work officially. I was like, well, I can still talk up about having a learning disability. I'm still allowed to do that. So I followed suit after Michelle Obama, and I went and bought a podcast microphone, and I got a kit, and I got a book on how to be a podcaster. And so I tested the waters with some guests, I got some guests on board just to kind of see how it might work. Mm-hmm. And it's now a year and a half on. I've got some amazing guests now on my podcast. I've got some amazing people signed up. And it's going really well. It's raising awareness of learning disability. And off the back of it, I've got some possible media opportunities coming in the next few months, which are very exciting. So I'm loving it. And it's, for me, the message of my own podcast is I want people to go away going, wow, A, Ciara's a really great podcaster, and I had a really good experience chatting with her. B, I've learned what a learning disability is and isn't. Mm-hmm. I've come away knowing that I've met a person with a learning disability and actually they're not scary. So that is kind of the message of my podcast. And actually, it's been really lovely because some people have said, I thought learning disability was this. Obviously, now I've realised it isn't that, it's this. So it's been really lovely. And I've had guests on, like the broadcaster Jeremy Vine. I've had my own cousin, U2's The Edge. He's been on mine last year. I've had Rob Brydon recently. Rob Brydon was so lovely. And I've gone to see him on tour live recently in London, and so I approached him and he said yes, which was amazing. So that episode is actually out at the moment, so please go listen. And yeah, I've got some other really great guests coming up in the next few months, so yeah.
Amazing. Who's been your favourite guest so far?
All of them.
You can't pick a favourite?
No.
Wouldn't be fair.
Okay. If I had to, I would obviously say the episode with my cousin, but all of them have been so lovely. And Jeremy Vine was lovely. Rob Brydon again was lovely. Like everybody I've had, they've been themselves. They haven't been like they are, there was no special about them. There was no I am me. They just literally came on Zoom, met me and gone, let's chat. And it was really nice. There was no celebrity, there was no VIP in the room. It was just me and them. And it was really great. And for me to meet those people, I've learned a huge lesson in not judging, because when you read about someone in a newspaper or a magazine, you get an idea of them. Sure. And they weren't like they were at all, which I thought. And actually that's taught me something as well. So it's been great, and now I call myself an official podcaster, and so look out for some future episodes.
We will. Do you want to tell people the title and where we can find it?
Yes, it's called Ciara's Pink Sparkle Podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify, Pocket Casts. It's on Podchaser. It's on Anchor. It's on all good podcast sites.
Yeah, wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to Ciara's pod. Fantastic.
Yes.
So I also wanted to ask you about your talk next year at ITAKOM. So it's all about, is it about quality of life, would you say, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So the theme is quality of life, as you say. So I'm going to be talking about what good quality of life looks like for people with a learning disability, and talk about, yes, there are barriers that people face, but actually they are just people. They are people with rights. They are people with feelings. They are people with emotions. They are people like you and I. And I want to get across that actually to have a real good life is all about getting the right support from early on. And if you get that early on good support, the more chance you'll have to have a really good life with good support. So that's kind of the theme of my talk. And I'll talk a little bit about my career as well, and kind of where I was when I was growing up to where I am now, and kind of how I've achieved things in my life as well a little bit. So I'm really hoping I can inspire. That's kind of the aim of my talk. Yeah,
it sounds fantastic. And finally, I also wanted to ask you about some of the other charity work that you do, because you're an ambassador and a trustee, and tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. So I am a trustee of two charities outside of Mencap. So they are called Head to Head Sensory Theatre, and my other one is the Sunnybank Trust. They are both disability charities in the Surrey area, of which I live near. Then I'm a patron for Dance Syndrome. They are an inclusive disability dance charity, and their aim is to get people with a disability to communicate through dance, and it's amazing. They do amazing work. My other patron hat is I've recently become a patron for a charity called include.org, and they are all about supporting people who have communication difficulties. So it's a slightly different message from learning disability, but then some people with a learning disability might also have a communication difficulty. So it kind of goes nicely hand in hand, but slightly different messaging. And it's really nice. And I went to my first event with them in my patron hat a couple of weeks ago, which was lovely. So I've got that under my belt now. So that was really nice to meet everybody properly face to face instead of Zoom. So that was really lovely. And then I'm a ambassador for two cancer awareness charities, and they are called Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust and the Eve Appeal. And they are there to spread the message of gynae cancer awareness. So it's around women's health issues mainly. And basically their messaging is like, go get a smear test, go and get checked out if you don't feel normal. And it's amazing because sadly, my cousin-in-law passed away from cancer when she was 48, which is no age at all.
Yeah.
She was robbed of her life at 48. She was newly married, and that was awful. That it was so sad that, you know, she just got married. She was really happy. She was settled. She had a job. She was working, got diagnosed, and literally 11 months later, she passed away. And so in her memory, I wanted to raise awareness of cancer and say to women, look, go and get checked, go and get tested, go. If you don't feel right, if you spot something, if you feel a lump, please, please, please go and get checked. So I wanted to do something in her memory to help raise awareness. And so I went and got my very first smear test after putting it off for so long. And she was the reason why I went, because she made me. And so then after I went, I made a video on social media, on my socials, basically spreading the message of, if I can go for my smear test and it's okay, you can too.
Yeah.
And now it's had like 14,000 views on my social media, and that's incredible. And I've had women writing to me going, I'm now booking mine because of your message. And that's incredible. If I can help save one life, I've done my job. So I'm very proud to have all my roles, and I'm always doing something. I'm very busy. I'm always somewhere talking to someone or doing an email or writing something for someone. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have all the roles that I do have. And yeah, I love my life. I'm very lucky. I get to speak up and I get to be a role model for people. And I just want to show the world that even though I'm a person with a learning disability, I can do all these other things as long as I have the right support, which I have from my family and Mencap and all the other people I work with, and they support me really well to do all the things I do. And I'm just really lucky. But as we all know, people with a learning disability, there are 1.4 million people living in the UK with a learning disability. And, I can speak up, but there are a lot of people with a learning disability out there in the UK who are not as lucky as me and who don't have that voice. So when I speak out, I'm not only speaking for me, I'm speaking for all these other people too. And it's really important I get that right. And so I am very proud of all I've achieved. So I'm really looking forward to the conference.
I feel like I need to take a nap after all that work chat. When do you get time to chill out? It doesn't sound like you get too much relaxation time.
Mainly weekends. Mainly
Okay, I'm glad you take weekends off. You need a bit of a break.
Yes, I take weekends off. Yeah, weekends. Like I do get annual leave from work, so I do try and get holiday off sometimes just to have a rest. But I love what I do, and I'm passionate about it. And I was diagnosed with my learning disability when I was 10 years old. I suffered in school. I suffered in the education system. I was told at the age of 10 years old, I would never achieve anything. And look at me now. I'm 43. I'm married. I live in my own home. I have a career. I have all these other amazing things that I do in my own spare time. I just have proved those people wrong, and I stand up for what I believe in. I'm very gobby. I say what I think. I say what I feel. And when I get to retirement age, I want to be able to look back and go, wow, I did all these things, and as a person with a learning disability, and now I can then hand over the baton to the next generation of people with a learning disability coming through and say to them, right, you now run the world, you do it. And I think if I can do that and leave a really lovely legacy to the next generation of people with a learning disability to do what I do, then the world has changed. But there's much more to do. The world still isn't inclusive of people with a learning disability right now, and we are working really hard to change that, and I'm trying to change that. But there's a long way to go till this world understands learning disability and people like me, and I won't stop till it changes. When it does, I can finally retire.
Okay, that's when you're going to reach retirement. Okay.
Yes.
Well, listen, you're doing fantastic work, and I really can't wait to meet you in person at ITAKOM next year and hear you talk. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to leave your links for your podcast and all those different charities that you mentioned in the notes below. So take care, and we'll speak to you soon, Ciara.
Thank you.
Bye, Ciara. Bye-bye.
Bye.